Hello, I'm Richard Haight, and today I would like to address an email that I received. So let me go ahead and read that and see where that takes us. Um, I received an email from Dorothy. It doesn't say where she's from, and it's a long email, so I'm sort of cut out just a certain portion of it and read that, and then and go from there. She grew up Catholic, and she's very interested in metaphysics, and she's read many books and workshops and expos. She's even become a minister, an interfaith minister in a little church. To summarize at the end, she feels she's stuck between two opposite worlds, metaphysics and Christianity, Buddhism, American Indian, and she doesn't know which way to go. She says, one night I'm chanting, one night I'm meditating, one night I'm drumming, and one day I'm reading Wiccan and then reading in the Bible, stay away from magic. So the Bible warns against magic, which I suppose is something that Wiccan teaches. She says she's totally lost, and she asked if I have any ideas. She says she loves them all, but I can't figure out which is the right path. So again, this is a question that is, I think, something that a lot of us are struggling with, and it's something that I went through for a lot of years in my life when I was young, and I was searching out what I describe as the bones of Christ. And during that time, during that search, I had explored many faiths and metaphysics and viewpoints and that sort of thing. And I don't want to say that any of these things are right or wrong. What I will say is that there's something deep down underneath all of the culture, the religion, the tools and techniques. There's something much more fundamental that's hidden deep down underneath of all of that stuff that may be driving you in your search. What I discovered is that the aspects of religion and spirituality are synonymous in a lot of ways with when I was in Japan, or just in martial arts training in general. When I was young, I was very interested in exotic martial arts. I was very interested in learning many techniques and different flavors and styles of martial art, and it all seemed so cool and appealing. And it was the statement of, it was always, oh, he knows more. How much does he know? And that sort of feeling. And everybody had their secrets, and there was this mystery about it. And there was a lot of intrigue and mystery, and just getting a taste of this or that and a flavor here and there made it very exciting and captivating. But at some point, one moves beyond that. And for me, I had to go through that. I had to go through that for a certain period of time. If I had met, at that time, say when I was 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, if I had met me now, maybe I'm not so interested in what me now is teaching at that time, because I wasn't really interested in pulling away all of that and finding that most fundamental thing. I was still kind of caught up in the technique. I was still kind of caught up in the mystique. Not saying that Dorothy that's what is attracting Dorothy. We don't know what is attracting Dorothy to feel as she is feeling and to be doing these different things. But even though there is that mystique and the interest in these techniques, behind that there's still something else, which is the flow towards discovering that more fundamental thing. eventually, once one learns enough of these cultures, enough of these techniques, enough of these knowledges, and enough information, one starts to realize that that's not satisfying. At least in my case, it wasn't satisfying. In the martial arts, what was occurring was that I was constantly viewing what I was doing and seeing, okay, what is the weakness there? How is that defeated? And that took me to the next level, which is kind of a stripping away. In the beginning, it's almost like an arms race of gathering information. You need to know more and have more skill than your opponent, and have a higher level strategy than your opponent, be able to read your opponent better, that sort of thing. And so it's a sort of an arms race. But at some point, one starts to realize that all of this information, all of this this training starts to pattern the body. And then one starts to realize that, oh, now the next step is to be able to recognize that that knowledge has patterned the body and that the body is going to move based on stimulus. And so I can counter this person just simply by pushing the buttons that will bring out that programming that is programmed into the body. He's going to respond in a certain way if I just press his buttons. And once I know that, then suddenly all of that training becomes the path to which he is defeated. The information then becomes a burden. So once that realization occurs, one starts to throw out techniques, one starts to throw out knowledge, one starts to find something that's more fundamental, that isn't programmed in. It's sort of it's a true intelligence, an intelligence that is dealing with the situation as it is in the moment, not with pre-programmed concepts or ideas. And so then the right response occurs in the moment spontaneously, and it can't be predicted by the opponent. You can't be tricked by the opponent. So therefore, knowledge is no longer a burden. The same thing is true of spiritual information, spiritual techniques, and knowledge. If we're going to apply these things to everyday life, not just when we're in our room drumming, not just when we're in church on Sunday morning or Saturday morning, depending on which lineage or culture you're from, but we want this to apply to everyday life. All extraneous stuff has to be stripped away, because everyday life has its own pressures. It has its stresses. And in the moment of that intensity, if we have to think to come up with some technique to be in the moment, that automatically means we're not in the moment. We are a step behind. In the martial arts, you're dead. If you have to think, you're dead. Now I'm talking about advanced martial arts training with swords, mind you. My training was Japanese jiu-jitsu in Japan with the highest level teachers of the sword, and open hand jiu-jitsu, as well as staff, Japanese short staff, and that sort of thing. Really all weapons. And so one starts to realize that everyday life has its pressures and its stresses, and stripping away becomes essential. And so therefore we're no longer interested in accumulating information, in cultures, in the mystique. Instead, we start throwing those things out, tossing those things out at that point. That's the point where I teach. That's the point where it's like you've climbed the mountain. There's all these different paths going up the mountain. At some point you reach the peak where all paths converge, and there's just one thing, that one line of ascension, where it's no longer limited by culture. It's no longer limited by information. It's no longer connected to those things. And therefore, all of the differences between the cultures are no longer relevant. At this point, the path is the same for everybody. Up to that point, path is different for everybody. That's not wrong. So for Dorothy, I would say that if you feel drawn to those things, keep doing them, and don't be concerned about which one is the right path or which one is the wrong path. Explore them thoroughly. Don't be worried about curses from God and all that. It's very fear-based stuff. But I would also recommend that you don't do any of this these things selfishly. The warning from Christianity about magic is, I actually think there's something to that. And the reason is most of what is what we're referring to when we talk about magic is manifesting that sort of thing, our desires, getting what we want. But that's not really about spirituality. That's sort of the mentality of a 3-year-old. Or a 2-year-old. We just want what we want. That's just desires and passions unbridled. And so I would say that just because something is not 3-dimensional, just because something seems mysterious, I wouldn't equate that with spirituality. To me, spirituality is the connection, the place of connected awareness to all that is. This is something that is inherent to everyone and everything. So it's not that we can ever be any more or less spiritual than we are. It's just, are we actually tuned to that place or not? Manifesting, casting spells, getting what we want, all that it's nothing to do with that. But when we reach that place, there's it's very dangerous. It's not helpful to give too much definition of that place, because the mind thrives on and feeds on definition, and whatever that definition is, isn't, by definition, isn't what I'm talking about. Because it's what I'm talking about is when all is stripped away, there's a vibrance, a sense of connectivity to all that is. That is, it's a beautiful place to be, and it's not a place of thought, and it's certainly not a place of malice. There's no malice there. If you're interested in that, at least that's what I'm working with. And you may be able to find some of that in these other traditions. I do not know, because I'm not that familiar with them. What I can say is that any tradition that is quite literal in its approach, for example, very conservative approaches to Christianity, the assumption is that they know what God is, and they know what right is and what wrong is. And that's a very dangerous assumption, because God can't be put in a box. We shouldn't create God in our image. And that's what's happened with a lot of Christianity. Well, most people in general. And if you say the word God, people have some sort of feeling, association, or image related to what God is. There's the assumption that may be unquestioned and may not have ever been considered. But there's an assumption of a knowing of what God is. And whatever it is that I'm talking about, this most fundamental thing, you might equate that to God. I have no definition for it. It's entirely beyond the mind's capacity to define. I can only describe, to a limited extent, the experience of that, not what it is. So I hope that this helps. Again, for Dorothy, explore, be curious, ask questions, and it's all right for you to enjoy these different traditions. Maybe the traditions, some of the people in those traditions may not appreciate that you're enjoying and exploring, but I would, if that's what you were drawn to, I would encourage you to continue doing that, so long as integrity is foundational and most fundamental to the exploration. And as always, thank you very much for your questions. If you have any other questions, please feel free to email me. If you're interested in public mentoring, which means an actual conversation on YouTube with me, we can set up that sort of thing if you'd like. I also do private mentoring. Many people need more intimate conversations over extended periods of time, and so I take them on as in a mentoring sense and help them through their own personal awakening struggles and path. If you are new to this channel and you would like to get more information, I do have a free audio course on my website, www.haight, www.richardhaight.net, and you can go in and sign up, and you will get a lot of lessons and great material sent to emailed directly to your inbox. So you might enjoy that. As always, subscribe, and thank you and bless you, and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.